Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Wednesday evening. Apologies for a bit of a wonky schedule this week. Tyler and I are at that point of the school year where we have field trips and events and everything like that. And so Tyler was at Universal Studios for a field trip on Monday. I was at Universal Studios yesterday for a field trip. We had great times, but it meant that the podcast obviously got pushed back. So we will be here today and tomorrow on a bit of an unusual schedule. And today we are talking about the Chargers post-draft acquisition options. We're trying to find the next Elijah Molden and Teair Tart for this team, which was a more difficult exercise than it might seem for this where this roster is set up. But we're going to have a good time having some discussions about some possible names that could fit in this new regime. And joining me, as always, is my good friend Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How are you doing tonight?
Doing very well. Bummed we didn't coordinate Universal Studios school field trip times. I had no idea you guys would even do that. It's the first time we had done this. So I don't know. Maybe next year we can all hang out and whatever.
Yeah.
As far as this topic of the show today, true to us and true to us trying to be as true as we can and honest as we can. We're trying to find these players that, aren't the superstar names that check enough boxes, but, trying to be honest and faithful to the process of this. It became very difficult to find names. And part of that is because Joe Hortiz and Jim Harbaugh and everyone have built a very, solid depth roster. It's not a ton of star power throughout that depth. This isn't like the Eagles roster last year, for example, where you could just bench guys that have 50 pressures. But this is a roster that has a ton of depth and a lot of commitment to players. And I mean, they've drafted more players these past 2 years than Telesco in his first three, because of all the comp picks and whatnot. So there's a ton of investment in this team, which made it very, very difficult to find names.
Yeah, I was listening to the Athletic Football Show on the way down to Universal Studios yesterday, and they've been doing these buy or sell segments on different kind of groups of teams. And Robert Mays kind of sorted the Chargers as a team that's just volume shooting to try and find as many building blocks as they can. Like that was kind of the goal of the offseason. So it's great. It's a great approach. If that's your approach and that was the goal, then the Chargers have nailed that. But it does make this particular show a little bit more difficult. So before we get started tonight, of course, have to give a quick shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks, the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. Whether you are a basketball fan in the midst of a potential finals push, if you're a Knicks fan in here, I don't know if we have any Knicks fans, or I guess maybe there's some Oklahoma City Thunder fans potentially around here. If you're a fan of the Final Four, you've had a great postseason run so far, and hopefully PrizePicks has been a part of that. So you are able to go to PrizePicks.com or download the app. It is actually the better way to do that, and you can cash in on the basketball playoffs with PrizePicks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your PrizePicks lineup. Whether it's points, rebounds, assists, take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 2,000 times cash today. Obviously, the game has already started today, so not today, but there's obviously the Tuesday specials, Flex Friday, etc. We have very few opportunities left for basketball. There's obviously some few opportunities left for hockey, but that is the best way to get into it. So PrizePicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. Again, you can go to prizepicks.com or download the app and go and use the code GUILTY at checkout to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Again, that is code GUILTY at checkout to get $50 instantly after your first play lineup. Okay. We do have a slideshow today. That's going to be a little bit more reserved for some potential, gems, if you will. But there's been a little buzz between the Chargers and potentially signing Von Miller from Sports Illustrated. And I don't know if they're like actual rumors or not. But given the nature of that specific player, and everybody was asking us about it, I figured we would kind of start today's show with a potential Von Miller kind of conversation. Obviously, Von is one of the best players of his generation. He's not quite the same player, but he could still definitely play. I was looking at PFF yesterday about this, and he actually had a 24% win rate against true pass sets. So when he was given true one-on-one opportunities last year in Buffalo, he was very highly effective. It's just kind of potentially working out the fit, potentially working out the other stuff besides one-on-one pass sets. So Tyler, what are your thoughts about the Chargers potentially signing Mr. Von Miller?
I'd be all for it. Right now, he's a better, I think, even at almost age 37 by the end of this season, a better pass rusher at minimum than Bud Dupree. The only hesitation I have with a signing like this is, does it force Thule out of the edge 2 role? Because if it does, then I'm not as interested. Not that I think Thule is like, wow, here comes the next 80 pressure Chargers edge rusher. But I really do want to see him in that full-time role as much as possible. Because, okay, let's say Miller is a 1-year deal. Miller, Dupree, and Mack are likely or potentially all gone next year. And you don't really know as much about Thule. So I want Thule to have his time to figure out how he can become that guy, or at least show he can be the edge too. Like you can for sure say next year, that's our edge too. Like that's our guy opposite, maybe a guy we have to spend a lot of money on, or a first-round edge rusher next year or something.
Sure.
If Von Miller joins the Chargers and he's back to being the special teams guy, it's like, I don't know. I would want to see Thule be able to do what I think he can do, which is be a pretty good edge rusher in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's certainly part of how they have kind of constructed this particular edge group. I'm not opposed to adding a 5th potential edge rusher, and we're going to talk about another one here in a minute. But I think when it comes to adding a guy like Von Miller, a lot of the common consensus is like, oh yes, he would be better than Bud Dupree. Like as a pass rusher, yes, unequivocally a much better pass rusher than Bud Dupree. I mentioned the true pass rush win rate last season, for Von Miller being very higher. For Mr. Bud Dupree, that number was 7.8%. So Bud Dupree's he's not a great pass rusher at this point in time. That's not why the Chargers signed him. I think that the Chargers signed him a very, very specific role where he can set a true edge, play the run, and push the pocket. And I think with this particular room, that's a skill set that is really needed in terms of the backup, because a lot of teams will rotate, edges 1 through 4, mix and match roles, things like that. The Chargers kind of hockey line up their defensive line in general. So it's not really like you very rarely saw like Thule on the edge and Joey on the edge. It was always Khalil and Joey, and then it was always Thule and Bud. And that's kind of how it went. And maybe when Joey was hurt, it was Khalil and Thule, and then they really only ran the 3. But they do kind of hockey shift this thing. So it really is going to be Thule and Khalil, and then Bud and Kyle Kennard. And so while I do, yes, obviously agree that Von Miller is better than Bud Dupree, I think that construction of having Von Miller and Kyle Kennard as your backups, and let's say you cut Bud Dupree in this scenario, leaves a lot to be desired from a run defense perspective. And Von Miller at this stage of his career is not an edge setter. He is a designated pass rusher to the max. And Kyle Kennard is, I think, going to struggle with truly setting an edge in the NFL this year. So the fit with that group is it's a little clunky to me. I understand, yes, better than Bud Dupree, but I think Bud Dupree's skill set is needed if you're going to play Kyle Kennard meaningful snaps in 2025. Like you mentioned, if the goal is to just get the best pass rush out there, and Thule is cool playing special teams again, then fine, whatever, I guess. But I think Thule has earned the right to start this year, and I think he is a better edge rusher right now than Von Miller. And I wouldn't really want to continue to see him play that special teams role. I want to see him be able to take that next step, and to me, that's more valuable than signing a guy like Von Miller. Yeah.
If you look at run stop rate, Miller is 19th in the last year's group of edge rushers. The problem is it's only on 70.
So he barely plays.
Yeah. So the rate is good on a per play basis. And I suppose for a backup, that can be okay. But that obviously the number of snaps is definitely concerning as well. Again, I don't want him to be the starter. If he's your third guy, okay, right, opposite Kennard, there's that, whatever. But ultimately, this guy has played fewer snaps than Joey Bosa has the last couple of years, and by hundreds of snaps as well. So there's risk with it, but I'm all for it. But this discussion did spawn my decision to add a player on our slides later, because of like, well, what about the whole special teams side of all these things? And the player, we'll talk about them, was at least out of college a better run defender.
Yeah. I think if you can keep all 5 on the active roster, I'm more okay with it. But that's tricky, man. Like keeping 5 active edge rushers, that takes away, a 6th defensive tackle. It takes away maybe a 5th safety. Maybe it takes away a 5th linebacker, etc. So roster constructing that is a little tricky. If Von Miller could still defend the run, then great. I'm all for it. But that's not currently the situation. So somebody in the chat brings up Zadarius Smith. For what it's worth, Zadarius Smith, I think, can be a bit of a better run defender, but he definitely same kind of deal. Like he is a designated pass rusher at this point in time. He had a pass rush win rate of 21.5 in true pass sets. He had more pressures and sacks than Von Miller last year, for what it's worth, but way more snaps. Again, Von Miller was kind of like working back from injuries and things like that. So if you look at pure pass rushing stats, you're probably going to see that Zadarius Smith is better, but he had 462 deep pass rushing snaps. Von Miller had 262. So it's not quite the same kind of volume. Again, very different roles. Zadarius Smith was essentially the Lions' main edge rusher, for the second half of the season, while Von was always kind of like a DPR type. So just something to keep in mind when you're kind of considering those two and how they might fit with this team.
Yeah. Do we actually have a contract projection for Von Miller? What that could look like from PFF?
Last time I checked, no.
Yeah. I don't know why though.
Well, because he was cut, so he wasn't like a
gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. So the Bills essentially decided to choose Joey over Von because they think Joey can play, more snaps for them essentially. Which,
yes.
We'll see. If Joey's healthy, then yes. But but looking at kind of like who's, that kind of role, right? Like Leonard Floyd makes $10 million a year for the Falcons, which is kind of crazy. Mike Dana for the Chiefs is at $8 million a year. So you're probably looking at Hassan Reddick got $14 million from the Bucks. Oh my gosh. You're probably looking at like $10 million base salary, maybe contract up to like 15. Just looking at the rest of the edge rusher market.
Yeah.
I mean, Harold Landry's at 14.5 for the Patriots. Like what? Yeah, that's what I would assume for Von Miller. I would say like maybe $10 million floor, like up to 15, 16 if he gets incentives kind of deal.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Our audio audience is going to take a quick break, and our YouTube audience is going to continue right along. Okay, let's get to again, we're searching for the next Elijah Moldens and Teair Tarts. So these are most likely going to be moves from a post-training camp kind of beginning. So the Chargers are gonna begin training camp a lot quicker this year, thanks to playing in the Hall of Fame game. Where their first preseason game is going to be on like July 31st, which is usually when they like open training camp, which is kind of crazy. So we're trying to find, again, these additions that the Chargers could make during or after training camp before their season that could bring in some value here. That's kind of how I approach this is maybe kind of bucketing those in similar regards here. And the first name I'm going to bring up, I'm sure a lot of people will be excited about this, but I'm going to talk about Evan Neal in a very similar kind of bucket as Elijah Molden, where you're looking for a player who is at the end of his rookie contract, who could potentially provide some long-term stability at a position of need. Now, obviously, Elijah Molden is a fantastic football player. I don't know if you're getting that kind of impact out of Evan Neal, given the Chargers situation and who would be in front of him. But he does seemingly fit the Chargers archetype of offensive lineman, which is let's just find a massive offensive tackle, and maybe he could play some guard for us. So he's 6'7", 340 pounds, and this is a guy who obviously checks a few boxes. He was a 3-year starter at Alabama at 3 different positions, and that was one of the reasons why we liked Evan Neal coming out of the draft. I don't remember if you watched him, but I watched him and I liked him.
Yeah, definitely.
And there was a good amount of buzz, and obviously he was a top 10 pick for a reason. It has not gone very well in the NFL. It has not gone very well for the Giants. But he did have a career best 96.7 pass blocking efficiency rating this
Yeah.
year. But an 80.8 run blocking grade, which is an elite run blocking grade on PFF in 2024. He played 459 total snaps. So he was a backup for the team, for the Giants. He was not a starter, but he at least knows how to run block, I think. He did have a Michigan offer as well. That's kind of been a theme that we've continued to highlight as much as we can. And the Giants, I think they would be like, they're going to move on from him at some point. They might hold on to him and see if they can, maybe reboot his value a little bit this season. But they've gone out of their way to sign veterans to play in front of him. Jermaine Illuminor, obviously, is their starting right tackle. Greg Van Roten is a starter. They signed James Hudson from the Browns to be potentially like swing tackle competition. So he's definitely on the hot seat in terms of his role in New York. His spot is not guaranteed. They have come out and said publicly that they expect him to play guard for the first time in his NFL career this year. So he's doing the whole position switch thing. There's other guys around him that they've signed and drafted to, challenge for his spot. And so if you're the Chargers, I don't think the Giants would cut him. Again, I feel like they would be more likely that they just keep him, and then next year, maybe somebody signs him for enough for them to get a comp pick or whatever. For the Chargers, I think this is like a day 3 pick swap. Maybe you send the Giants like a 5th round pick, you get a 7th in the back, six back, whatever. And this is your potential Trey Pipkins replacement, who is also a free agent after this season. So in an ideal world, you send a day 3 pick swap for Evan Neal. This year he probably doesn't play a whole lot for you because Trey Pipkins would be ahead of him. I think so with Jamari Sawyer, but you get a year with him, and maybe next year you sign him to like a modest swing tackle contract, and he's your future swing tackle, or maybe he plays guard, whatever. I think this is a dart throw potentially worth throwing out there. But I also understand that this is not necessarily like an Elijah Molden impact player for 2025.
No, I think this, even though the investment in terms of what the Giants have made with Neal as a first round pick is different, this is a bit more of like the Tart side of things, where for one, there were some concerns with Tart and some of his character and interest in playing football. With Neal, there's been some, rumblings of some character things. I would be very, very curious what Andy Bischoff would have to say about Neal, not specifically his coach, but very
I forgot about that connection. Yeah.
I don't know if it's positive. I don't know if it's negative, but they did take on Tart last year, and reportedly, as we know, like not a single issue with Tart. And I think Tart said like, this is the first team that's really embraced him, was the Chargers. Yeah. Like he was finally embraced here. And maybe for Neal, that change of scenery with the Chargers, as it has been for many players, not as much on offense, would be awesome for him. So to me, like if they can take a chance on Alex Leatherwood, they can take a chance on any offensive lineman. And so clearly with Becton, they like this kind of style of player, especially if he could be a guard or, hey, even a swing tackle, fine. So I'm definitely for this one. That trio of offensive tackles has hurt me. All 3 of them, 1, 2, 3. Unfortunately, Neal was the guy that I had first. I believe you had the NC State guy.
I had Icky higher, like barely, but it has not been great.
Yes, but hey, bring him over to good old Devlin and Greg Roman, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, this is again kind of a dart throw, situation. I think this would potentially push Branson Taylor off the roster, which I know some people are very excited about him.
Way too excited, guys. Calm down.
Too excited. But Evan Neal as your offensive lineman 9 or 8, maybe, if he kind of pushes Jamari out of a spot. I think is not the worst thing in the world. So Evan Neal, I think obviously you don't get drafted that highly without reason. Like obviously things don't work out sometimes. But we've seen offensive linemen who get into different situations and can hit, especially with those kind of physical traits and things like that. A team who actually believes in you, a team with like higher end quarterback play, etc. So that those are all things that could make a difference here for a guy who's still very supremely talented.
Yes, I was trying to look at Mekhi Becton's rookie season stats, or at least pre-guard switch. Although he was hurt a couple of years too, so I don't think the numbers will turn all that great for him.
Yes, he
Well,
was injured.
his final year with the Jets was a PBE of 94.9. So you know what? Hey, if Neal's got a 96 something, perhaps there is hope after all.
Yeah. All right, let's get to your first one here.
All right, so I have Isaiah Foskey, the edge rusher from the Saints. This was a player that was like that fringe, like 3rd round, 4th round kind of player, at least for me. And I believe you didn't like love him as well. We were both kind of on the same page. There was some 2nd round hype with him, but he was a guy that was definitely more of a run defender than a toolsy pass rusher type. I thought of him because of the Von Miller conversation and because of special teams, because Kyle Kennard and Ficken, like we've discussed that, hey, they love what Kennard could do on special teams, but it is a bit of a projection because at Georgia Tech, he played some, I think it was in 4 years, 150 snaps or so on special teams, but he didn't play any special teams his final year, his only year at South Carolina. Whereas Isaiah Foskey, like this is someone who has played the 6th most edge snaps, special team snaps among all edge defenders last year with 354. Like this guy at minimum so far has been basically Thule in terms of the special teams work. Like he's the guy, one of the guys out there as an edge defender playing special teams. And this would help keep Thule developing at edge too and not forced to play special teams. And even if, like, let's say things don't work out with Kennard, you still don't have to go force Thule back out there. Like Thule to me is an important starter this year that it needs to just focus on being an edge defender. And that's it. And this could help you here. He was recruited by Mike Ellison to Notre Dame, obviously recruited by Jay Harbaugh to Michigan. So I think that there's enough connections here. Right now, he's barely playing any defense. Obviously, there's a new defensive coordinator over there. If you don't know, his name is Brandon Staley. Do I think that Chris Rumph jeopardizes anyone's roster spot? Not necessarily. Do I think Brandon Staley could take Chris Rumph and say, yes, I would prefer player I'm familiar with that I kind of quote unquote developed over Foskey? That's possible. And Rumph was playing special teams as well. So if push comes to shove and it's between those two, I do think that maybe, now granted, Foskey's in year 3 of his rookie deal, so this wouldn't be the final year that the Chargers would acquire him, but perhaps with a little incentive, or maybe if he just gets cut, he could be available to the Chargers.
Yeah, if you look at the Saints edge rush room, so obviously Cam Jordan is still, I wouldn't say playing well necessarily, but he is still on the roster. They have Chase Young, who they signed to a pretty decent contract. Carl Granderson's on a decent contract. And then they obviously brought in, Chris Rumph. They drafted Fadil Diggs, which I didn't realize. So I would say his roster spot is in jeopardy. Just how we know about how Brendan Staley feels about Chris Rumph. So I think this one is, again, this is a definitely not somebody who is going to like change the Chargers defense by any means. But I like how in this situation, if the Chargers are going to keep 5 edge rushers, he could play the special teams role, and then Kyle Kennard can kind of ease into that role a little bit, and he can focus purely on being a DPR type, and Foskey can be your special teams edge rusher. So, this roster construction would make a lot of sense, and you kind of highlighted his run defense as well. I think his NFL ceiling is capped because he's not like a great pass rusher, obviously, but I trust that he'll be able to set an edge. I trust that he'll be able to play special teams. And so the fit next to Kyle Kennard would be pretty nice, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So again, not a wow, my gosh, this is going to change the Chargers forever. But Tart, Molden, that sort of vein. Get a guy in here, contribute, rotate. Hey, maybe you never know.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, next up for me is John Metchie, the wide receiver from Houston. Why the Chargers should target him? I think obviously they should continue to look for weapons for Justin. In all seriousness, I think the Chargers have done a nice job again of volume shooting the wide receiver position. And you look at their potential X receiver depth chart. You obviously have Mike Williams, you have Trey Harris, you have Brendan Rice. At the Z spot, you have Quentin, you have Keandre Lambert-Smith, you have Jalen Reagor. At the slot, you don't really have that next guy behind Ladd McConkey. I know that there's a lot of people out there who really like Darius Davis as an offensive player and think he can contribute in that regard. I just have never really felt that way about Darius Davis. I think he can do more gadget things, and I think he should touch the football more often. But I don't think he's a true like slot receiver just quite yet. And so they have some guys who can occasionally move to the slot, like Keandre Lambert-Smith can play in the slot. That's where Penn State actually used him more when he was there. If you want to put Trey Harris in the slot, he can do some of those things. But they don't have a true like backup slot receiver who can actually run routes, create separations, and push vertically. I know a lot of people like Luke Grimm. I watched him finally. I don't think he can push vertically. I think he is like a very stereotypical like short area slot receiver. So the Chargers, they want to go vertical routes. Like they are going to push the football. Justin Herbert was second in average depth of target last year, which was kind of an underrated storyline from there. So you have to have somebody who can push vertically, and I think John Metchie can be that guy for them. Obviously, you know, you guys know his situation, you know, with the battle with leukemia. That has definitely, you know, derailed his career because he was a surefire, you know, top 50 selection. And it just is, it sucks that this has kind of been his situation because he really, I think, was really destined for a positive NFL career. And now with everything that's gone on there, the Texans have traded for Christian Kirk. They signed Justin Watson and Braxton Berrios. And then they drafted the 2 Iowa State receivers. They still have Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State. Obviously, they have Nico Collins. There's a pretty good chance that John Metchie gets cut this training camp. So it's just it's a tough situation for him, but I do think he is potentially available for the cheap. And I think if he can ever get back to his previous self, I think there is still stuff there that I think could be pretty nice. There were 3 games in the middle of the season last year where he had like 75 yards, 65 yards, 70 yards. So he has been semi-productive when given the chance. There's just not been a lot of chances for a variety of reasons, including his own health. But for the Chargers, I think if they could get him early in the potential training camp cycle, they could see what they have here, maybe work him in as a backup slot. At best, he's your wide receiver 5. But there's a good chance that obviously, you know, he's kind of like a practice squad guy, things like that. I just think that the Chargers do need a real like backup slot option, and I don't think they have that right now.
Yeah, I had not considered like specifically backup slot because like, okay, maybe you could throw this player there, that player there, but I don't know if the fit is as clean as maybe I would have hoped. Thomas Martinez points out like maybe Gadsden's your big slot if
sure goes down. They have bodies that they could throw at that problem, and if listen, like if Vlad goes down, like John Metchie's not solving anything. Like if Vlad goes down, the passing offense goes down with him. But I just think they do need somebody who could like be a true slot receiver.
Yeah, no, I agree there for sure. And I was too cowardly to pick any receiver for this because it's so difficult with this room to figure out. But
sure,
the justification of like, okay, let's say a backup slot guy, even if he doesn't make the roster, maybe they carry 7 initially, and he fades to practice squad, whatever. They carried 7 last year for a time being. So I could see it. But like targeting the Houston Texans and specifically Metchie makes a ton of sense for the Chargers, like and for what you came up with here too. So I didn't even think of Metchie, and I should have, but I really did like this one.
Yeah, kind of circling back, my process of like, let's find the next Elijah Molden. I went like directly to the 2022 NFL draft, and I was like trying to find guys who you know, were picked kind of highly, but maybe haven't like worked out necessarily where they're at. And then, you know, crowded position rooms. You know, my first like the first crowded position room guy I found was John Metchie. And again, there's a variety of reasons why he's not really gotten a shot there, but I think this is somebody who could be available for a very late day 3 pick swap. I think there's a good chance that he does actually end up getting cut, just because the Texans have so many guys behind him. So it's clunky. The wide receiver room, I think, is kind of set in terms of the 53. But when it comes to how they run the offense and how they want to practice and how they want to do these preseason games, I don't know, man. I don't know if I really wanted to see Luke Grimm playing the entire game at the slot. Like, I think they need some other opportunities or some other options there to run out the slot. So, you know, this is again a little clunky, but I think John Metchie still has some value left to give to the NFL, and if he can stay healthy and, you know, get past everything that's happened, I think this could be a solid dart throw for them.
Yeah, it's all mining. This whole process, all these slides, all these players, it's all about mining to find if there's just any more value the Chargers could get out of these players. So good call. Alrighty. So next up, I have Will Hernandez, the interior offensive lineman, formerly of the Cardinals, not currently with a roster. The only like veteran, other than Von Miller, who we've talked about, only veteran that's not like a tradable person that's on here. Honestly, this is me. Like, we're still trying to signal, like, hey, Chargers need help on interior still, because they are truly an injury away from chaos. Either, okay, let's say Zion gets hurt or Becton gets hurt. It's not very fun, particularly if Becton gets hurt. But still, like, they just need another guy. And I Chargers fans seem very excited about Branson Taylor. I didn't realize how much Pittsburgh film Chargers fans were grinding over the last month or so, but apparently it's quite a bit. But if they are actually serious about Zion to center, they need a guy. This is a guy who's played over 2,600 snaps at left guard, 3,200 snaps at right guard. He did have a season-ending knee injury in 2024, but he was pretty consistent the previous years. 3,000 snaps the previous 3 seasons. So this is a guy, they don't seem to love Jamari Sawyer. This is someone who's just competing with Jamari Sawyer for that swing guard type. Theoretically could also compete for left guard. This is the most I could see a path to actually starting for the Chargers player on this list. I really just would like them to get any bit of help there and not pretend like there isn't one issue away from disaster. This is the only player that has a projection from PFF because he's still a free agent. Granted, this was before free agency, so it could drop now, but it was 2 years, 4.75 million APY. Fine. I think the Chargers need a legit veteran guard out there for them. Okay, so let's say Zion is starter. Okay, then Bozeman's your left guard. To me, just if you want to actually make that thing a thing, then you need a left guard who can actually play left guard.
Yeah, when the Zion to center conversation was happening, that was right around after the Chargers had signed Mekhi Becton. And Will Hernandez has been somebody that we've talked a lot about as potentially, a starter left guard option for them. I don't know if the lack of signing is due to the injury. Maybe he's not fully healthy just quite yet. Maybe he's waiting for training camp. I don't really know the situation here, but he's a solid starting option for a team, for a guard. And I think again, we remain skeptical that the Zion to center thing is real. He was at the OTA practice yesterday, snapping to Justin Herbert and working with the first team offense at center. We'll see what happens. I still think that they're going to land on the very logical scenario where Bradley Bozeman, maybe not logical for them, that Bradley Bozeman is the starting center and Zion is your starting left guard. So if they want to make Zion at center a thing, they need somebody else. And they think Andre James can play left guard. He's never done it before in his career. He hasn't even played guard in high school. He was a high school tackle, college tackle, and then he moved to center in the NFL and has only played center. So I think if they're going to do the Zion thing, I agree with you. I think they do need a true option here. I think at this year, you're probably looking at a 1-year contract pretty close to the minimum because he hasn't signed at this point. Maybe it's 1.5 base up to 2.5 kind of situation. But he's going to be affordable wherever he signs. A lot of the initial buzz was he'll go back to Arizona here, or his offensive line coach is the offensive coordinator for Dallas now. Maybe he'll follow him, but he remains unsigned. And I think that means that he's kind of waiting out for different options.
Yeah. So I'm all for it. I've got another lineman on here. I'm looking for that spot to just get figured out. And if the process is just throw numbers and bodies at it, that is fine by me.
Yeah. And they have kind of approached several other positions that way. So it would be nice to see them be able to do that at left guard as well. All right. Again, before we continue here, our audio audience is going to take a quick break and our visual audience is going to continue right along. All right, next for me, a different Cardinals player, a reunion for the Chargers. I'm going to bring up Justin Jones, defensive lineman for the Cardinals, formerly of the Chicago Bears as well. Unfortunately, has not really played a ton for the Cardinals. He was injured after, I think, week 4 last year, and did have a season-ending injury for what it's worth. There was always this just like want for more potential from Justin Jones when he was with the Chargers. There were some real flashes, right? But it was like one or two flashes a game, and there was just never really like able to truly put it together. He had 63 pressures combined and 8 sacks across 2 seasons in Chicago. Turned into a very nice player, earned himself a nice contract. Never truly like a star player, but he was a solid 3 technique pass rusher for the Bears, and we'll see what happens with the Cardinals and if he can stay there. But I still don't love the Chargers' interior pass rush. I think Teair Tart and Jamari Caldwell can provide some for who they are. I think Deshaun Hand can provide some for who he is, but it's a lot of guys who could potentially give you like 20 pressures, whereas this is a guy who's given an NFL team over 30 pressures in a season, which is more than what we can say in the current room. So this is not a great pass rushing option. I think the Chargers could have moved in a different direction if they wanted to upgrade the pass rush that much. Maybe Justin Eboigbe is truly him, and we'll see. But I think they need some other interior pass rusher who can give them, 25 to 30 pressures, and Justin Jones has done that for the Bears. We have returning to the Chargers precedent with Mike Williams and Denzel Perryman at this point in time. So the Chargers have shown that they are very willing to explore opportunities with these kind of guys. And obviously Justin Jones has played for a variety of schemes in the NFL in his career. But from the Cardinals perspective, they have back-to-back first-round investments in Darius Robinson and Walter Nolan, each of who they think are going to start at 3 technique. And then they have Dalvin Tomlinson, Calais Campbell, etc. So this is definitely something. This is definitely somebody who I think is going to get cut. If the Chargers really wanted to pursue him, I guess they could try and trade for him early on in the training camp process. But he is somebody who I think the Chargers should be eyeing from a roster cut down standpoint, because I just think they need some kind of rotational defensive pass rusher type. And I'm not too sure how committed this team is to like Otito Ogbonia. Naquan Jones, I think, could be potentially something, but he's on a minimum contract. They're not super committed to him either. And he's more of a one technique run defender, I think. But if the Chargers want to explore options from an interior pass rusher standpoint, I think Justin Jones could make some sense. And he's still just 29. It feels like he's been in the league forever, but he's still just 29 years old.
Yeah, this was a really good call. And it's funny that the former Chargers player, I didn't even circle in my brain, but I had forgotten that Justin Jones was in the league and doing things, because it wasn't a great last year for him. But I remember when he went to the Bears, of course, basically everyone that left Brandon Staley was like, hey, look, that guy's good now. Unfortunately, that was Justin Jones, and good for him for what he did in Chicago. Didn't work out in Arizona. You can tell in our slideshows if a player's been really good or really bad in their new spot because of the photos that I can find of them. And that's the one I can find of Justin Jones. Not doing anything on the field, unfortunately. So it wasn't a great year for him, but this makes a ton of sense. This is almost like a Morgan Fox swap out from you last year. Not that he has to play as much, but
right.
As someone who can actually rush the passer, ultimately the 25 pressures, if he has 22 pressures next year, that would be more than maybe everyone but one defensive tackle for the Chargers, this year. Maybe Tart does take that step forward and become a 30 pressure guy. We'll see. But I also like this because, they've talked very highly about, or mentors mentioned Eboigbe and the weight change and what he's going to be able to do this year. Obviously, they believe in Jamari Caldwell. They signed these other players, but it kind of reminds me, especially with Eboigbe, of a Junior Colson, where I really believe what Junior Colson's going to do. But we're just gonna go bring back Denzel Perryman, as you mentioned, and Troy Dye, and just make sure we're set there. In case this isn't a right now solution, and this doesn't hit right now with Eboigbe, because we still don't know. And last year it didn't work. Let's just bring in a guy to make sure we actually have some pass rush juice. So if Jones doesn't move the needle for you guys, fine. But to me, if this is the 5th or 6th option for you, great. I think that's totally fine. Of everyone that's on this list, this is my favorite one. So I really do like this idea. Cool. Yeah, I do like this idea quite a bit because I forgot he existed. And for some reason, I thought there was more distance between his 35 pressure season with Chicago, but it's only 2 years ago. So we're talking about trying to mine more value and get something out of these players, get them their second contract. This is very much so in the vein of a Tart, of a Ford, etc.
Yeah, and the injury, I'm not sure where he's at, but I think if he's healthy, he can get back to that kind of point where he can give you that kind of production. The interior pass rusher market is obviously not it's not a great spot right now, given free agency has gone and the draft has gone. The Chargers could potentially sign a guy like a Maurice Hurst, who I think we've talked about on the show previously, maybe like a Quinton Jefferson, but those guys are all 33, 35. I think there's still some juice you could potentially squeeze out of a guy like Justin Jones, who's still just 29.
Yeah. He did have a triceps injury, as you mentioned. At least you mentioned the season-ending injury. So hopefully, like, all's good there. But that's not a me call. I have no idea.
That's fair.
I watched The Pit. That's about it.
Oh, you did watch The Pit. Is it any good?
So good. Oh my God, it's so good. Yeah, it's incredible. That's a whole other. Let's just talk about that instead of my next player. All right,
we can talk about The Pit afterwards. Yeah.
All right. Speaking of injured players and injuries and whatnot, Ricky Stromberg, the center for the Bears. I'm trying to say, please add into your offensive line. That's where I'm at right now. His career tanked after November of his rookie season, where he had a season-ending knee injury. He was released before the end of training camp or end of the preseason. That following year, he was then picked up by the Bears, added to their practice squad, then signed a reserve futures deal with them. But this is, again, like looking for players like, man, that could have been something, but something happened and derailed their career. This is a former third-round selection, 2,400 center snaps at Arkansas, 95th percentile RAS. I did not grade him. I would have if the Chargers had drafted him, but they didn't. But Steven did have him as his 92nd player in that class and a third-round grade on him, a late third-round grade on him. But nevertheless, this is a player with talent. This isn't some like late day 3 player we'd never heard of. We're just trying to find someone. Like, this player did have some talent and some buzz and was drafted in the 3rd round too. He had been working some left guard, some right guard with Washington, not as much in the regular season because obviously he didn't play a ton, but he did have, I think, 150 or 200 preseason snaps at left guard, at right guard, and some center. So there. They don't really have a center 3 if they like to carry a 3rd center this year because whatever. They tried that with maybe Bucky Williams last year or somebody else, this and that. They only really have, and Bucky Williams is gone, and obviously Brendan Hymas is gone, which, wow, what a room last year. But right now, their center 3 is Josh Kaltenberger from Maryland. I didn't grade Stromberg, so again, I can't compare, but I'm guessing if I'll take Steven's word for it. Even if Steven had him as a 4th round grade, let's say, or a 4th round target, that's better than I would feel about Kaltenberger and how what I felt about him watching his film as a UDFA. So I don't mind them taking a swing on this. It's not like I don't know if they want to carry 3 centers, but I'm open to anything.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to add another center option at some point because like Bradley Bozeman had several like vet days off last year. And maybe that's when you can kind of get the whole like Zion Johnson evaluation. Maybe that's when you get, Andre James with the first team offense. But even with that, like you do need other options. So they have Carson Barnhart who can play some center too. It sounds like in OTAs he's been mostly like a guard, and Kaltenberger has been the 3rd center. So yeah, I have not watched Kaltenberger, but I would like to see, some kind of potential upgrade there. I want to say Stromberg was a Brandon Thorne guy as well, if I remember correctly. Like he had some
definitely
fans.
had the buzz. Mm-hmm.
He definitely had the buzz, and it was strange that he did not get drafted higher. But then again, center apparently now teams don't want to draft center, which happened this year too. So
fair.
So in my notes, I really liked his range and I liked his anchor. Those were like the 2 main things that I wrote down from his draft evaluation. So who knows? Like I have not watched any of his like NFL tape of what there has been.
Right.
But I do think that there is some potential value left for him. And, with the Bears, I could definitely see why like a Ben Johnson kind of guy would like him because, you look at that RAS and his range and things like that he can do athletically. Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's a really good fit for him. And I think there's a potential chance he could stick on that roster. But he was a futures guy. That's a risky business for offensive linemen to be one of those guys who's just on the practice squad and futures contract. You can bounce around quite a lot. So for the Chargers, I think it's a worthwhile bet if he does get cut, but this also feels like a potential like practice squad signing, not really like a let's get him on the 53 kind of deal.
Yeah. Yep. So Brandon Thorne had him as IOL 9. I don't recall how great that class was. Overall rank 104, had about a 4th round grade on him. His pro comp was David Andrews. So yeah, just go sign David Andrews.
Yeah. That interior offensive line class it has some really high-end players. So like Peter Skoronski, Steve Avila, Osiris Torrance. I guess Skoronski's still kind of like figuring things out. Those guys have all played really, really well. Joe Tippmann for the Jets been a bit of a mixed bag. John Michael Schmitz has been okay for the Giants, but then man, this group not great after that. So my next one was Brandon Daniels from Utah. He's bounced around a ton. John Gaines from UCLA, he's bounced around a lot. Andrew Voorhees I had graded pretty highly, but obviously he tore his ACL at the combine. Yeah. Chandler Zavala, Ricky Stromberg, Tyler Steen, who's been good for the Eagles. I mean, great situation, obviously. Olu Atimi from Michigan. He's the starting Seahawks center, I guess, now. So that's pretty good for him. Juice Scruggs, Antonio Maffei. Yeah, not a great group overall, but some really, really good players over the top.
Yeah, so bring in anybody. I'm fine with it. Give it a whirl. If we're at Ricky Stromberg center, 3 snaps for starting for the Chargers by the end. Yeah, Nick Hardwick unretiring. We joked like Josh Harris. Fine. Like at this point, just what's the plan?
Yeah, there has to be some kind of other plan. So we'll see what happens. If any injury happens to Bozeman or James, I feel like they would go out and sign somebody. Like there's just no way you can justify, Carlton Berger being your second center or Carson Barnhart. Like that would be ridiculous. So, you got to go get some kind of depth. I think this would make some sense for them. Yep.
And that's our last player. I didn't add anybody else.
All right. Sounds good. Let's get to, we have 4 super chats today. So we'll get to those real quickly. Appreciate you guys as always jumping in. Dark Samus with a couple Chiefs ones. Chiefs play the Eagles, Ravens, Bills, Lions, Washington, Dallas. Says the Chiefs' schedule is very tough, and that's a reason why he thinks the Bolts might win the division.
I mean, the Chargers also play the Eagles, the Washington, and Dallas, and they also have to play the Chiefs twice, which has me a bit worried there. So it's definitely no cakewalk for the Chargers either. And as long as the Chiefs' schedule is different. It's been the most difficult schedule in the AFC West for 10 years, I'm pretty sure now, and they've managed just fine. I do sense the weakness there for sure. I apparently got killed for saying I was terrified of what the Broncos could become if everything hits for them. Is heaven forbid the Broncos with an elite defense be scary. But it's a tough one.
Added a first-round corner prospect that is fucking awesome.
Yes. Yeah, that's like everyone's like, I wrote all that, and it's like, you're terrified of Bo Nix. I'm like, that's not what I meant, guys. But okay.
Yeah, I don't even think you put him in the tweet.
I said like, as long as Bo Nix doesn't become terrible, spiral downward. And if Harvey hits, if Ingram hits, like because they didn't have a running back or a tight end last year, that Broncos team could be pretty good.
Yeah, they don't have like a star receiver, but like everywhere else, that all of their other position rooms are really good. If RJ Harvey can hit, like you mentioned. So yeah, the Chiefs schedule being tough, like it's always tough. It hasn't stopped them before. I'm stunned at how many Chargers fans are like, the Chiefs this is the year, like this is the Chiefs are going to be bad. Like I don't understand. They made the Super Bowl last year, and there are some losses, right? But they have everybody else that's still important. Like, they still have Travis Kelce. They still have Mahomes, obviously. They still have Andy Reid. They still have Spags. They still have Chris Jones. They still have a great defense across the board. Maybe like their safety room without Justin Reid is like a little weak, but who cares? In the Chargers having a weaker schedule, I don't really buy that. Like, I think the Chargers schedule is plenty difficult. Whatever kind of metric you want to look at. If you want to look at like percentage, like win percentage from last year, the Chargers are 11th highest in that league. The Chiefs are 8th. So they're right next to each other. The Chargers play 7 teams who were in the playoffs last year, and that includes the Chiefs and the Broncos. They played 3 of the 4 teams who were playing on conference championship weekend last year. They'll face 8 teams this year whose current predicted Vegas win total is at least 8.5 or higher. Again, that includes the Chiefs and the Broncos twice. So yeah, the Chiefs schedule is probably like a little harder, but that doesn't make the Chargers have an easier schedule. Like the Chargers schedule is also very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll find out pretty early, right? Chargers, Chiefs, week 1, Brazil. We'll find out pretty early where things stack up. But I mean, the Chiefs still get to play the Giants, the Jaguars, the Raiders, the Broncos TBD, Colts. Again, Dallas, we both picked the Chargers to win that one. That's late in the year too. Oh, they play them on Thanksgiving. Interesting.
That feels like Cowboys' funeral, like the Thanksgiving
yes.
game getting
yes,
crushed by the Chiefs. Like that feels like Cowboys' funeral.
Yeah, I might enjoy that one. Whoever wins that one. But yeah, they also play the Titans, so it's not like they don't have some wins on their schedule too.
The schedules are not that different. Like they're in the same division, so
yes,
just a couple games here and there.
Yeah, although I think location helps the Chargers this year of where.
For sure. Nicholas Sampson Mook says, be brutally honest, guys. Do you think we can just barely win the Super Bowl this year, or will we dominate the Super Bowl this year? I love the energy.
Yeah.
Appreciate the super chat. I think you and I are on the same page that like next year is probably like the Super Bowl push. But I do think I think everybody's expectation should be that they win a playoff game in 2025.
Yes, it is a failure if they do not win a playoff game in 2025, whether that's everyone healthy or everyone gets hurt. Regardless, they need to win a playoff game. They got to get the monkey off of Justin Herbert's back there.
Yeah.
The Chargers themselves don't feel like they're a team that is actually that thinks that they can win a Super Bowl this year. Jim Harbaugh obviously will believe that, and like everyone will believe that. But you look at the moves, and it's not like this is a team that's like, yeah, here we go. It really does feel like next year and 2027 as well. Those are your years to get it figured out. Go push that Super Bowl. If they make the Super Bowl, they're going to dominate it, though. I fully believe that if they make it, they're going to dominate it. Unless it's the Eagles, and then maybe I'll take that back. Which probably will be.
Yeah. NFC wise, Eagles or the Lions probably feel like the two most teams likely to get there. So I think the Chargers, if things go right, like maybe, depending on seeding and who beats who, obviously, maybe there's a pretty good chance that they make it to a championship game. We'll see what happens there, but they should win a playoff game. There's a good chance that we see Chargers Houston again in round 1.
Not going.
But this time around, the Houston Texans offensive line is even worse than it was last year. So
by choice.
By choice. Who needs an all-pro left tackle?
Yeah, they have 25 wide receivers, but absolutely no one to block.
Yeah. But should be fun either way.
Yeah.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man says, if Ladd gets hurt, there should be no worry for the slot wide receiver. We can line up Craig Roman there.
Sure. Why not? Go for it. Man, that is a really rough line room for the Texans.
Yeah. Titus Howard is their best player, and like they don't know where he's going to play. Like he might be a left tackle, he might be a right tackle, he might be a guard. Like they have no idea. Like it's really, really bad.
Yeah. Cam Robinson, Titus Howard, Jarrett Patterson, Juice Scruggs, Blake Fisher. Sure.
I liked Blake Fisher, but not enough to just like hand him a starting job. I don't know, man. It's not like CJ Stroud is the most mobile guy in the world. Like if this was the line for Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, I'd be like, okay, like, let's take some dart throws, volume shoot. They can scramble out of sacks. CJ Stroud can scramble, but he's not that kind of scrambler. So yeah, tough one.
Except in the playoffs that I got to watch.
Yeah. That was so random.
That was fun.
All righty. Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out?
Thanks to everyone for jumping in and being active in the chat here. Half the time I have no idea what you guys are talking about. Yes, The Pit is a good show. But yeah, it felt like we hadn't live streamed in forever. And our last live stream was just a reaction to the schedule. It's kind of fun to be like back and doing this and whatnot. And hopefully the Shun and Haglin trio goes 3 for 3 on their Universal trips, and then your wife gets home safely.
Yeah, so she's going there tomorrow. So it's a busy weekend at Universal Studios for the Haglin crew, but it's fun. I had not gone on the Mario Kart ride last year when we went. It was like the second weekend it was open.
Oh God.
And it was like a 2-hour wait. So we went at the worst possible time last year. We do this every year for our graduates. And last year it was like 2 or 3, maybe 3 weeks after it had opened, but it was the weekend like leading into Memorial Day. So it was like Thursday instead of Tuesday. Yesterday we had wait times of like 15-20 minutes. It was great. So we got to go on the Mario Kart ride. I went on it a second time. So it's a fun, super entertaining world. There are people who are extremely into like the wristband thing and play all the games. Like this one guy came up to us, and I was with a group of like 5 other so it was me and 5 teachers, and he came up to us with like a whole bag of wristbands, and he was like, "Can you guys go play the games with me, and I'll get your points?" And we were like, "Sure." You're gonna let us play for free? And he was like, "Yeah, I just want the points." And I was like, "Okay." So we just followed this guy around for like an hour and a half playing the games, and it was fun. They've done a very good job setting up that room.
Yeah, that's it. That's awesome. I got to spend $45 on my wristband. My principal went before, and he's like, "Yeah, they're like $10." I'm like, oh, "Okay, great." So I walked up, boom, 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 scan 45. Well, now I have one.
Yeah, now I have one. But it's good for like forever, right? Like you get to keep using it.
It better be good forever. It better defend me from the nuclear holocaust. Yeah, one of these guys right here. I got mine. And played all the mini games. It was fun.
Yeah, they are fun. It was a good time though.
Yeah, good to hear.
Brendan Harbaugh loves to say guilty as charged. He has said it quite a few times. It's like his favorite saying. So the recent one, obviously, the team was like Denzel Perryman was showing him the schedule release, and there's like that part with Justin Herbert where he's like, "My guy," like they put it into the thing. Yeah, he said guilty as charged, and I think he said it in like a press conference a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
So we are working around some intro things to get that in there for you guys. It'll be a lot of fun, and by we I mean Tyler. So it should be a fun change in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, he said it. I have at least 4 times now, and other people have said it, but now that he said it at least 4 times in my brain, it's pretty funny. And they've all been kind of just like little sound bites, but specifically guilty as charged. That's my guy was like the absolute perfect thing he could have said. And I know there are people out there that are punching the freaking air that he said that because they hate us. But I find it so entertaining that is like his new phrase.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. So maybe someday we can have Jim Harbaugh on the show. It'd be fantastic. But I have had the opportunity to ask him.
You think we run long on our episodes? That is a 7-hour discussion.
Oh man, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. But
that'd be pretty cool.
We'll see there.
Anytime, Harbaugh. Come on, Jimmy. If you're really feeling guilty as charged, we're happy to.
Do you think anybody actually calls him Jimmy?
I do. I will call him Jimmy now.
That's fair. All right, you guys. Yeah. So we have not planned what we're going to talk about tomorrow yet, but we are going to have an episode tomorrow, and we will see you then. So thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. For Tyler, I'm Steven, and we'll see you tomorrow. As always, bolt up.